It's California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. We are joined by Elliot Duchon. He is the superintendent in Jurupa Valley Unified School District in the Riverside County area. And so I want to talk to you about a decision that came out in June. It's known as the Vergara decision. It really sent shockwaves through the education community. And the court essentially ruled that the teacher tenure rules, the teacher dismissal rules, the teacher layoff rules, all unconstitutional.
Correct.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty weighty thing for school districts to contend with. And basically what the judge said, students have a fundamental right to an education and a quality education, and they have an equal right, whether they're poor or rich, and the teacher dismissal laws, the layoff laws, and tenure laws disproportionately hurt poor kids.
And let's focus on, for example, LIFO. Last in, first
right,
out. I mean, what happens with LIFO is you have these younger teachers who are energetic. They'll often go to inner city schools, more challenged schools, and then when there's a layoff, under California law, seniority is the basis upon which teachers are laid off. So those teachers
Absolutely.
that are new, they get laid off quickly.
Absolutely. Strictly by the date they were hired. So the first year we had major layoffs, we actually brought every teacher back, but we gave 201 pink slips. As I walked through schools, every time I'd see this young, fantastic teacher, and the principal would say, she's on the list, he's on the list. And it's heartbreaking, and that's not to say that seasoned teachers, I'll use that word, because can't be the very best. But the idea is if you're going to be in a layoff situation, you ought to have some criteria for quality.
And at this stage, in this state, the only criteria is seniority.
Seniority.
That's it.
Right.
Other states have mixed systems.
Correct, mixed systems.
But then there's also the question of tenure. I mean, I would love to have a job where I got tenure, lifetime tenure, after 2 years. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, well, I serve from board meeting to board meeting.
Exactly.
So, and that's important.
And I take nothing away from our teachers. I honor our teachers. But 2 years, lifetime tenure, and to be fired, I mean, you know, I was looking at a statistic. I guess 2.2 teachers a year are dismissed.
Correct.
In the entire state. That's like 0.0008%.
It's very small. I've seen some different numbers. I've seen some different numbers, but the real issue is, first of all, the judge pointed out, so that decision in 2 years is really made after about 1.5 years. And we know it takes much longer than that to develop expertise in anything, let alone a really tough job like teaching. And so why after 2 years do you get guaranteed a lifelong profession? Particularly when it may not be fair to the teacher. So I may have a teacher that's going to take 4 years or 5 years.
Right, it goes both ways.
And the judge pointed out that we have a process for dismissing classified staff that seems to work, and it's not abusive. Because on the other hand, you don't want districts to be abusive about dismissing people.
I agree, but you know, I've talked about this case countless times. Forgive me, but I have to bring it up with you. You know the Miramonte case.
Right.
I mean, the male teacher who served his male fluids on a spoon to children.
It's gross. I mean, yeah.
Well, but what happened was even grosser, more gross, whatever it is, sir.
Yeah.
He got a 25-year sentence in jail, totally appropriate, and a $40,000 check from the district.
Right.
Because he couldn't be dismissed without going through a lengthy process. Now, to the credit of the legislature, if that happened today, the rules have changed.
There have been some rule changes.
But I mean, good grief.
And some of the, interestingly, in that particular case, they couldn't go back more than 4 years on his record. And very often when you're going through a teacher dismissal, you need previous students to be able to testify. They may be gone, and it's maybe much more than 4 years.
And the legislation that did pass allows for quicker dismissals, but only for these kind of egregious acts.
Exactly.
It's not for ineffective teachers.
Right.
And so, you know, we do want to protect folks from, you know, difficult situations with principals, but
we want to protect both sides.
Right.
Jurupa, in my tenure, we've never dismissed a teacher for bad teaching. It's all been on other types of behavior, inappropriate behavior with students or staff.
But was it all right? Were you able to do it?
We've gone through some. It's been very costly.
That's the point.
You have to be very determined. And you better make sure you're right about what you're doing, because you don't want to be abusive in the process. So I think there needs to be a better balance.
Do you think we will see reform?
I hope so.
I want to talk
I didn't
about,
say yes, you
I want to
noticed
talk
that.
about another area of reform, and that deals with Common Core.
Okay,
Common
happy
Core
to.
is here. You know, there's been some controversy about Common Core, but in California, it's happening. And you brought something I think is really instructive. This is an example of what Common Core will bring us in math. So John, if you see on this side of the piece of paper, these are the problems.
Right.
And so the students are doing the problems. On this side of the paper, it's the reflection. The student has to reflect upon what he or she learned.
Exactly.
Why is that important?
Oh, it's important because in the real world, when you go to solve a problem, I don't care whether it's square footage to put carpeting in, you can have a process where you go through basically some correct computations and end up with an answer that's totally wrong. The student needs to be, first of all, I want to clarify that they have to know math facts. We have not disregarded 4 times 5 equals 20.
It's interesting you say that because, you know, there are some folks that are in opposition to Common Core that are suggesting that somehow we're not going to give them the basics.
No, they need the basics. You cannot do an algebra problem if you can't sum it up that 4 times 5 equals 20 and it's not 21 or 23 or 27. But the real problem is, in terms of teaching math, is that for students to get a grasp of math, and even more importantly, a love of math, they have to understand what it does. So as the student works through the problem, they say, first of all, I wrote the problem down right. You know, and sometimes that was my problem. I'd always write it down wrong. So then you get the wrong answer. But secondly, I did the right process in solving the problem, and I understood what the process was about, not just following a formula.
At the same time, Common Core is looking to do what's kind of known as you want to teach fewer subjects but go deeper, as opposed to more subjects and stay on the surface. That feels right. But then again, is there something to be said about a survey?
Well, we're not disregarding important stuff. But there's a lot of things that are included in a curriculum, and back in the dark ages when I taught, you covered the textbook, right? The textbook was the curriculum. Now we're making sure that students know the fundamentals and they can work through, whether it's literature, whether it's reading a newspaper, whether it's a math problem, that they have a deep understanding. Because survey's okay, but it really doesn't get answers to complex problems.
So speaking of Common Core, as Common Core is coming in, California is changing the way it is allowing districts to educate through what's known as the LCFF,
Right.
Local Control Funding Formula, giving more discretion to districts. That is, discretion is used through what's known as the LCAP, Local Control Accountability Plan, and you seek information from stakeholders to see what they want their districts to do. What have you learned?
You know, yeah, it's
Through the LCAPs.
It's funny, an old dog can learn new tricks.
Right, you learned them?
It's been a fascinating process, and not one that I looked forward to. So
Interesting,
I'll
yeah.
admit
No,
from
fine.
the beginning, I wasn't real happy about what we were going to, quote, have to do.
Right.
But the things we did when we went to the community and parents, we learned a lot in terms of how to respond to the needs of the parents and the students
And
in
what
our
did they
community.
say? I'm sure you heard similar themes.
We heard things like, we need to know more about technology so we can help our kids. So just taking that example.
We need
well,
a
but
test.
just
We
take-
need education.
Right, so
instruction.
just taking that example, what we ended up in our plan, the product was, we increased the hours of our elementary school library aides, and we put computers in the libraries so that those aides could help parents with their kids on online activities.
What about help the teachers? The kids know more about technology than the teachers.
I'm going to say a lot of our teachers are young
I
enough
jest.
to, they know more than I do.
I
but-
jest.
Yeah, but it certainly involves the students, the teachers. Our teachers certainly wanted the resources to teach kids in the 21st century.
It's an
That was
exciting time.
critical.
It's a scary time, no doubt,
Yeah.
but it's an exciting time. And you're hopeful. You feel as if we're on the right path.
I think we're absolutely on the right path, more than ever. I think the
I like it.
Common Core, the LCFF give us an opportunity to really educate kids well.
He's Elliot Duchon. He is the superintendent of Jurupa Valley Unified School District. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's California Edition.